On John Boehner, I just heard the news as I was coming out of the meeting here, so it took me by surprise. And John Boehner is a good man. He is a patriot. He cares deeply about the House, an institution in which he's served for a long time. The one thing I will say is that my hope is there's a recognition on the part of the next speaker, something I think John understood, even though at times it was challenging to bring his caucus along, that we can have significant differences on issues, but that doesn't mean you shut down the government.
Welcome back to the show. As the president just said, even he was surprised by Speaker Boehner's resignation announcement today, while House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi seemed to have a hard time holding back a smile.
Speaker announcing his resignation. That resignation of the Speaker is a stark indication of the disarray of the House Republicans, a demonstration of their obsession with shutting down government at the expense of women's health, and a sign of the failure of the House Republicans to be willing to engage in dialogue for the good of the American people.
Small smile, could have been the Botox, who really knows? But Senate Majority Leader, his name is Mitch McConnell, was a little more warm regarding the Speaker's departure.
Grace under pressure, country and institution before self. These are the things that come to mind when I think of John Boehner. He's an ally, he's a friend, and he took over as Republican leader at a very difficult time for his party. When some said Republicans could never recover, he never gave up.
Not only didn't he give up, but he also took the Republican minority in the House and grew it to the largest Republican majority since the 1920s. Although there are many Republicans cheering his departure, we showed you a couple of them before in that crowd, there is no doubt he had the party's interest at heart. Noah, your first reaction as a staunch conservative?
I understand that a lot of conservatives are frustrated with his tenure. And I do think it's appropriate at this point to look back on it with a little bit more perspective. We have seen, as you said, the expansion of the majority, but also substantial gains for conservatives. Earmarks are, for the most part, gone. Federal spending has been relatively capped. You've seen a substantial holding of the line with a Democratic president that wanted his spending priorities pushed forward, and they were blocked. That is the role of the minority government, and now that we have a majority government with the executive being in the other party, you have divided government, and this is sort of a natural tension. So while I understand conservatives want to see their priorities pushed a little bit further, and they've been frustrated with particularly the Senate leadership that hasn't been moving those priorities forward, but honestly, a lot of that concern about John Boehner is misplaced, particularly John Boehner and John Boehner's leadership.
Rick, their Gallup poll today said 62% of Republican voters, feel betrayed by their representatives. And this seems to be reflective of that. And Noah's exactly right. You add up all the wins, and it's pretty impressive when you look at the resume.
And you know, look, I may be a Democrat, but I have to tell you, I think that John Boehner got a couple of raw deals during his time. Everybody forgets, and I know I'm supposed to defend the president, but if you think back to the grand bargain days of 2010 in December, I have always been convinced that the president had shook Speaker Boehner's hand on a deal, and then when he got word that the senators had gotten together and maybe he was going to get a better deal, he backed out of the deal, I believe, with the Speaker. And I've always criticized Obama for doing that. You don't do that. You shake somebody's hand, you keep the deal. And I think people might have had a different viewpoint of John Boehner had it not happened that way. Look, this guy, I wouldn't have wanted his job for anything. I mean, herding cats is just the least of it. And I think, and I'm very disappointed in Nancy Pelosi, somebody who's put their heart and soul into the country, whether you agree with them or not, and I disagree with John Boehner a lot more than I agreed. You congratulate him for his service and you send him happily on his way.
Show a little class, I agree. Carrie?
But you know what, though? I think one of the biggest problems that we saw with Boehner was that he didn't really give the conservatives within his own conference any kind of victories when there were any kind of opportunities, whether it was with the TPP or TPA, when there were a number of Democrats were on his side where he could deliver those victories, and he was working with the administration on that. And right afterwards, Obama got that victory when he could have delivered that victory to his own party. So it was also a number of times when he was delivering the funding of Obamacare to the through the continuing resolutions over and over and over again. And I was just looking at that clip over there with McConnell, and they're saying, well, he has a kind of warm smile going on. He better be careful because he may be next.
Yeah, well, that's all I read about on Twitter today is that McConnell, you're next. No,
he won't be next.
Probably not, but still, that seems to be the consensus now, that there's some sort of momentum.
People don't understand the difference between the Senate and the House and how things work.
Precisely. So let's do a little lightning round right now. Who is next, Rick Unger? Your top 3 choices.
I think the odds-on favorite has to be Majority Leader McCarthy.
Kind of a California.
Hensarling will be the choice of the further right wing. It could be a consensus candidate possibly, but my money's on McCarthy with Democratic votes.
Karen?
I'm putting Hensarling as the top choice. He is pretty much respected by the Freedom Caucus and also respected by those who are not in the Freedom Caucus.
Okay.
McCarthy, pretty good.
McCarthy, the real question is whether or not Scalise runs for majority leader or if he stays as whip and who succeeds as majority leader.
That's going to be the ideological war, is majority leader.
Interesting. I got my money on Louis Gohmert.
He said he's not running.
He says he's not running.
Oh, no.
All right, Trey Gowdy, just for the hair alone. We'll be discussing the Pope's final day in New York a little bit later, but as his historic visit to the United States continues to dominate the headlines, more and more Americans are asking, who is this Pope Francis? Well, as always, Newsmax, we got you covered. Learn more about the Pope and his humble rise to the Vatican in the book, Francis, a Pope for Our Time. Get this special offer right now at newsmax.com/Pope or call 1-800-203-7047. Up next is Donald Trump's star finally fading.